January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. Let's focus on time. Running out. What could that mean if something runs out? We ran out of time. We ran out of some resource or some supply of something. So again, the headline from AP, Associated Press, January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. This is by Mary Claire Jalonik. I believe that's correct, the pronunciation. Can't be sure. And from Washington. Working at an urgent pace, the House committee investigating January 6th has managed in 15 months to collect a staggering or shocking trove or large volume of material that includes transcripts of more than 1,000 interviews and millions of other documents. Soon, the panel's evidence about an unprecedented attack on democracy, most of which the public has never seen, will need a safe home. The 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans on the panel have said that their probe of the 2021 insurrection is for history, not only for current concern, and to ensure that nothing like it ever happens again. But Republicans allied with former President Trump, who are hostile to the investigation, could take the congressional majority in November elections, potentially making it harder for the committee to protect or preserve its documents and transcripts if they are not already made public. So those are the few details we'll give. We're not going to read the whole article. We never do. Just the first few sentences. Back to the headline. January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. And we're focusing on the phrasal verb to run out of something. In this case, it's time, but it could be money, it could be energy, it could be coffee, it could be patience. So what does that mean? What could that mean to run out of something? Give me your thoughts. Okay, the second segment here in the headline, again, January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. We had a focus word here. It was a phrasal verb, to run out of something. To run out of something. January 6th panel seeks to preserve its work as time runs out. They're running out of time. To run out of something is to not have any more. The supply is over. It's gone. Esgotado. There's no more. So we use this phrasal verb with resources, with resources like time, money, coffee, right? Hey, we ran out of coffee. Anything that you could consider a resource, a recurso, any supplies. We also use this with virtues and, like patience, right? I have a 2-year-old little girl, and you might imagine, a parent running out of patience with their child. So yeah, to run out of something is to be close or completely out of the supply of the thing that you're mentioning. In this case, time. January 6th panel runs out of time or is running out of time, and they want to preserve their work. As I mentioned before, it is our custom here, we're also going to review some of the other vocab. This is imperfect, right? I don't know what you don't know when you listen to these episodes. So I'm trying to predict what is most difficult, or even in some cases, I've done these articles in class with students. So some of the questions or words or phrases that I choose are because students have already said, hey, I don't understand this, or it's familiar, but I don't quite know how to use it. It's not in my vocab yet. So some of this is just me guessing, and some of this is from actual classes with students over the years that leads me to believe, or gives me the idea of what is more difficult and what is less difficult. So there is a phrase in the parts that I read in the AP article, a trove of material. Let me see if I can find it. It's the first sentence, actually. Working at an urgent pace or speed, the House Committee investigating January 6th, 2020, has managed in 15 months to collect or gather a staggering trove of material. Let's forget trove for a minute. Staggering. I overlooked that, or I missed that. Staggering. Shocking. Surprising. Difficult to believe. So that's staggering. 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 It's an adjective. Trove. A staggering. They managed to collect a staggering or shocking trove of material. Trove is just a fancy word for a lot. That's it. Lots of material. So they're expressing in a word that is not common. They gathered or they collected a lot of evidence, a lot of potential evidence, a lot of material. And they mention what that would look like: transcripts, interviews, documents, and all of that. So a panel. Actually, this is in the headline, also in the sentences that I read. A panel. What is a panel? The January 6th panel. A panel is a group of judges. A group of judges. So I think about, I'm 30 years old, reading this in 2022. American Idol, or America's Next Top Talent, or in the Brazil version, Brazil's Next Top Talent. Or I think I'm getting the name wrong, but a panel is a group of judges, a group of hopefully experts or people who have some expertise that are judging or evaluating something. So in this example, right, we're talking about a panel that is trying to decide and evaluate evidence collected after the January 6th insurrection in Washington, D.C. So they're not judging people's talent. They're not talent experts. They're politicians who are reviewing evidence to determine if, hey, the things that happened here, this is what we believe the evidence would point to or conclude, whether or not that this was an event that just kind of happened with no real causes or people responsible, or if this was something where, actually, this was not an accident. We have evidence. These are the documents and material we have gone over or reviewed, and this is what the evidence would point to, what conclusion it points to. So a panel of judges, a panel of experts. What else? To be allied with someone. To be allied. Let me see here. This is towards the end of the recording. I'm not sure if I read this in the recording, but I'll read the sentence again. But Republicans allied with former President Donald Trump who are hostile to the investigation could take the congressional majority in November elections, potentially making it harder for the committee to protect its documents and transcripts if they are not already made public. That was a long sentence, but Republicans allied with former President Donald Trump. What could that mean, to be allied with someone? You're on the same team. An ally, A-L-L-Y. Allied, as I read it, A-L-L-I-E-D. To be allied with someone is to be on the same team. If you follow history at all or have any conception of World War II, right, there was the Axis, which were a group of allies, and there were the Allies, which were a group of allies, people on the same team. That's it. I didn't have anything else that looked to me particularly difficult or strange, or, one of the things I look for when I'm trying to choose words or phrases that maybe or probably are more difficult, their degree of difference from Portuguese. And maybe people listen to this who are not Brazilian or Portuguese from Portugal. But yeah, so a lot of the vocab in this headline and the few sentences that I read, they're not so different than Portuguese, right? So that's all I have. But we have questions now. This part is for you to reflect and connect with the content and to think and feel something about what it is you just listened to. You can answer, in your head on paper. You can make a video and respond. You can write a response on email or in the appropriate channels. So the first question: how should we decide when evidence should be made public? How should we, I guess we means society, wherever you live. How should we decide when evidence should be made public? Immediately, my brain thinks of, in the criminology world or in the criminal justice world, body-worn camera evidence, right? There's many different ways and policies, at least in the United States, of when an incident happens, when do you release the evidence to the public? And how does that affect the way the public will interpret the evidence? How does that affect the way they will kind of make up their mind or perceive the big picture? So in this case, there's a panel reviewing documents and evidence for January 6th, and they're running out of time. So a lot of these people are not going to be in office, or they're not going to have their jobs anymore. Some of them are quitting politics. The Republicans on the panel are leaving office, and some of the Democrats too. So what do they do? Do they release evidence to the public before they run out of time and let kind of the public go through and review things that they have not commented on publicly? Do they reserve it? Do they say, well, our time's up and we didn't finish, but we're done? So what do you do? And in the general sense, what do you do with evidence? How do you decide when to release it to the public? And there's a lot of different arenas where this is applicable, but my brain goes to body-worn cameras and things like that, or even phone evidence and things that police collect when they're doing their job. When do you release it to the public? What's next? Should all evidence be made public? Should all evidence be made public? And again, if you could think about this in a criminal investigation by police, you can imagine this January 6th panel, right? They have a lot of material. Not all of it is evidence of something related to January 6th. A lot of it, some of it may have information that's completely irrelevant to the event that they're investigating. So, but as members of the public, how much evidence, or should all evidence be made public? Is that something that you think the public has a right to review on their own? Or do you trust the officials, or police in this case, or lawyers in other moments? Do you trust them to decide for you which evidence is relevant and which evidence should come out to the public? There's a lot of, this is maybe different than in Brazil, but in the U.S. there's criminal investigations with evidence, excuse me, that you don't see for a long time, maybe never, because the people in the trial or the proceso or things like that, some of this gets lost in the process, and the public will never see it. So again, should all evidence be made public? Our next question, and I guess it's related to the previous one. When should evidence be kept private? When should evidence be kept private? When, I guess, and why should evidence not be released to the public? Number 4, I guess, or our next question. How should we advance when investigations into political figures or people or parties run out of time or money or political favor? Again, this is a longer question. How should we advance? How should we continue? What direction should we go in when investigations into political figures, parties, or people run out of time or money or political favor? So, and maybe there's examples in Brazil that you could think of, political investigations or investigations into politicians or parties. But I'll use the article that we used here, the January 6th. They're running out of time. Their new people are going to be put in Congress. Some of these people will lose their election. Some of them are retiring or aposentando. And so what should we do? Should we just say, well, the people managing the investigation are no longer here, so let's just stop? How do we advance, and who do we trust to make those decisions about what to do with investigations that are not finished, or at least have not made any conclusions? My voice is really bad today. I think I will start a fundraiser, $1 every time my voice cracks or I have to cough during an episode. I'll throw $1 in, and maybe you could win some money by listening to my episodes from the quality of my voice. Our next question: do you think your performance professionally is better or worse as time runs out in the day? So this has nothing to do, it's not related to the article. This is just using the phrasal verb to run out. Do you think your performance professionally is better or worse as time runs out in the day? Do you do better work or worse as you look at the clock and, oof, there's only an hour left, there's only 30 minutes left? Does that make you better at your job, knowing that the time is almost up? Or does that make you worse at your job? When do you do your best work? And our last question in the segment: would you ignore evidence or information if you learned that it was leaked or disseminated in an improper way? Would you ignore evidence or information or data if you learned that it were leaked or disseminated in an improper way? Immediately, my brain thinks of Sergio Moro, the prosecution of Lula, and there was what was the guy's name? Glenn Greenwald, The Intercept, right? He released text messages between the judge and the prosecutor, Sergio Moro, and clearly you read the text messages and you realize that, oh my goodness, regardless of the evidence against Lula, whatever the evidence says, we can at least look at the relationship between these two people who are not supposed to have a relationship or communication about evidence in the process. And you can, or you cannot, make a conclusion about, is this fair? Is this the way it's supposed to happen, a prosecution of someone? So again, would you ignore evidence or information or data if you learned that it were leaked or disseminated in an improper way? I remember having conversations about Sergio Moro and people kind of focusing more on the fact that the text messages were hacked. Hey, this was hacked. This is illegal. You can't release text messages like that. Those are private. Well, that may be true, but can you ignore the information after you've seen it? This happens in court a lot, right? Police can't just get information and evidence without following the law. They can't search your house, at least in the United States. I believe in Brazil too. They can't search your house unless they have a reason. And so if they get evidence in a bad or improper way in a criminal court, that's not okay. And we're not talking about a criminal court. That's the question was not about that. The question is about you, the court of public opinion, your opinion. How do you decide to ignore or pay attention to evidence if you learned that it were leaked or disseminated in an improper way? Would you ignore new information because of how you got it or because of how someone released it? Another example, let's go away from politics. Basketball, NBA. There is a NBA team, the Golden State Warriors, and recently there was a fight on their team. Initially, it was just, hey, two people fighting on a sports team. Whatever. This happens. And then there was a leak, or vazamento, of a video from the fight. And then after seeing the video, people started to kind of change their opinion about the fight and about the people involved. So again, the question is for you, not in a criminal court, not in an actual arena where there's rules, but in your brain, in your mind. Would you ignore evidence or information or data if you learned or knew that it was leaked or disseminated in an improper way?